you have a new piece out in Inside Hook called "A Startup Linked to Peter Thiel Wants to Build the Next Great City in Greenland." I did a little bit of a story about Greenland the other day for the bonus episode. And we talked about like how Greenlanders, there's 56,000 of them. They do not want to be part of, obviously, the United States. They don't even want to be part of Denmark. And they want independence. And actually, Donald Trump and his like, setting his sights on Greenland has made Greenlanders want even more of that independence. So it's really interesting now that we're talking about how, some of these tech fascists are actually interested in Greenland specifically to build what they call like charter cities, or, what other words are we using for them?
Freedom cities,
corporate city-state, startup nations. Tell me, because this has been going on for many, many, many years. The idea that these techno-fascists want to start up their own cities, it's been a discussion for a long time. And yes, it's always linked back to Peter Thiel. But can you just explain, what's the point? What is the point of having a corporate city-state or a startup nation?
So yeah, that's a great question. I think ultimately where they come from is sort of the same reasons that lead them to, try and take over the government, or X/Twitter, which is like they want to be free to move fast and break things and explore, recycling your son's blood to increase your longevity, or just
measuring his heart on at night.
Yeah. And so the history goes back a good ways. But yeah, as you said, it does always come back to Peter Thiel in some way, because he's sort of, the PayPal mafia, right? There's like a bigger sort of lore there of how they've just been messing everything up for everybody for a long time. And he has been particularly excited about getting the heck out of Dodge. He owns like this bug out bunker in New Zealand, and he's been funding like seasteading, which is basically just like, if you get far enough out into the ocean, it's international waters, there are no laws.
And I read recently that the reason that he's like, Peter Thiel doesn't want to do seasteading anymore is because the rich are like, I don't want to be at sea. I don't want to pay taxes, but I also don't want to be at sea. Can we do this on land?
Yeah, he's the thing that he has done well, I think, so to speak, is that he's like spread his efforts so broadly. So he's got his fingers in so many pies, and it's not just him, right? It's Mark Andreessen and Balaji Srinivasan, who are all just like buddy and sort of in that whole headspace of trying to just do their own thing. And they're like, things are going to go bad, so we got to prep.
Yeah. Well, tell me then about this guy. Tell me about your article and Dryden Brown, who reading back like a backstory on him seems to have literally no qualifications. Like at least some Peter Thiel and Elon Musk like little toadies are like Alex Karp, like I guess is a Rhodes Scholar, something crazy like that. Even I cannot believe that. But like this guy Dryden, who says he went to Greenland kind of on this mission to try to build a what is he calls Praxis, which is his like little startup nation. Explain who he is and what Praxis is.
So Dryden is this really interesting character. He's right now, I think he's in his late 20s. And he's been, for the past 4 years, roughly, been reported on at various points by like Wired, Mother Jones, New York Times, as he sort of develops this from the ground up. And the more money he gets, the more you're like, well, how does this keep happening? Mm-hmm. He sort of was a UC Santa Barbara grad. Not a terrible school by any means, but not exactly sort of like, the elite that we would expect to just be pulling this sort of BS. And then he got fired from his job as like an analyst, according to the New York Times. And then he met somebody in the finance world, sort of became his buddy and his like co-founder, who does this sort of thing. He went to Greenland with him as part of his, just vibes trip. And the history has been essentially just vibes. He's pulled this before. He's gone to Africa, and I forget which country it was, but and because there are a lot of these sort of special economic zones in development in Africa, that was originally one of the like. He originally said Africa. He moved to the Mediterranean. Now he's in Greenland. But when he went to Africa,
it's all like early Zionism. Everyone's like, oh, yeah, we're going to start our own enclave. Like, sorry to interrupt. So this is his tweet. I went to Greenland to try to buy it. Here's what happened. Oh, did it fail, my guy? And so he's already gotten $20 million of an investment to start Praxis. Again, this is like a 28-year-old kid. He wants to build this like, techno-fascist utopia or whatever it is, Praxis Nation. And
you have to sign a pledge to, like, if you want to be a member of Praxis Nation, there's the pledge online. You could sign it right now, except that there's a wait list, so he claims.
Jesus. So wait, I just wanted to go to this part of your article because as part of Praxis's declaration of assent, they write, as the warrior kings once sought the sacred grail, so too shall we build an empire where the true power flows from heroic courage and alignment with the divine order. What the Brown's description of Praxis builds on these pseudo-mythical themes, you write. Praxian architecture would be hero futurism with their first city on Earth, a stepping stone to expanding Mars for their, quote, empire, network empire. Jesus Christ, just go to Mars already. So I guess what I want to ask you is also like, it's not just that it is free of taxes and free of government, any kind of government control, as if Doge is not already doing that for them in a very, again, the Curtis Yarvin, we should just have a king who is a corporate CEO, run everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it also sounds like really Christian nationalists, really white nationalists, really creepy. Like, what do you know of the way that Thiel and Praxis and other organizations, because I want to ask you about Prospera, like what's their sort of cultural ethos, if you will?
Yeah, so I guess going a little bit further back, there's Pronomos Capital, which is basically the Thiel's funding arm for this sort of thing, and so it's involved with a lot of these things. But Thiel, I mean, has been sort of a Westaboo, I guess, if for lack of a better word. He's like obsessed with the concept of the West, and he's got a lot of these like Lord of the Rings themed companies or startups that he's involved in, and I'm sure Tolkien is rolling over in his grave right now. But yeah, so there's this concept of like the West and the hero, and that also ties into this sort of Catholic nationalism that I mean, because it is a little Catholic for Dryden. He like talks a lot about like the church coming back and sort of like having a purpose, and like what's that mean, like which way Western man. He's sort of really in that ethos. And some of these, like you said, some of these zones are just like, I just want the money, right? There's I think it's called Lagos Free City in Lagos, and the Nigerian government has just said like, just do what you're gonna do, and there's not really an ethos there of assent or anything like that. Versus this, he's just like, yeah, we're heroes. You guys are just NPCs, and we're building it. Get on board or get stuffed.
But unlike so there's Pronomos. So what's the link that Praxis has? Is it Pronomos Capital? Is that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Pronomos Capital is usually the one that sort of gets them off the ground, and then they have to sort of fend for themselves to a certain extent, find other people to sort of bring money in. A lot of it's like crypto stuff, or like, what's that online betting site that like lets you bet on anything? Those guys who are also tied to Thiel eventually. So
Polymarket?
Yeah, Polymarket.
Right.
A lot of them are eventually tied back together, so it's sort of like the same guys funding the same guys. And Praxis has like 525 million on tap from their last round. Now, obviously,
wow,
they don't have it in the bank just yet, right? Like it sort of invests in tranches and stuff like that. But theoretically, they could just do it with that much money.
But they don't have I mean, they're looking at Greenland. How serious is that? I mean, do we know? Because you also sent me some background on this. Do we know whether like the Greenland bid is linked to any of these ideas to build a utopic, cryptocurrency funded, nation state? Do they have the ear of Donald Trump?
So Praxis is sort of one of the weirder ones. They've been they were kind of the first ones to pivot because they don't actually have a nation state. Versus Prospera actually exists in Honduras. And they're sort of in this legal battle with the government as to whether or not they can exist.
Okay, timeout. Prospera, by the way, y'all, according to Andy wrote about this. Prospera was started by, what is it, the great grandson of Milton Friedman, kind of the godfather of, laissez-faire economics and the invisible hand of the market, the Chicago boys, all of this free market BS. Not quite a libertarian, but definitely, or maybe he really was ultimately. He did not really believe that the nation had any role to play, that government had any role to play. But anyway, so this is his grandson, started Prospera, and they do, as you mentioned, have physical places in, is it Honduras and Nigeria?
Mm-hmm. And some of these, like the one in Nigeria, is built into special economic zones that the government sort of sets up as just tariff-free ports, duty-free stuff, much lax, very lax regulations, sort of do your own thing, but please give us your money kind of situation. And then within that, they're sort of parceling this Lagos Free City out to be well, hey, we'll sell you this parcel, do what you want. The thing in Prospera is that it was actually a plan from Paul Romer, who basically was the chief economist for the World Bank for a while.
Of course it was, because all of this is, to even have these, I'm sorry to interrupt, but even have these export processing zones, or I remember learning about all of this back in the early 2000s when I was protesting against, basically the World Bank and the World Economic Forum and all of these international financial institutions that just wanted to, yes, create, areas of economic activity that allowed corporations to do whatever they want, pay whatever they want, not pay any tariffs. The idea, we already have these things. They are baked into yes, the World Bank and the IMF and all of these ideas that these entities have floated for countries like Nigeria to be oh, this is going to really stimulate your economy when you allow corporations to come in and just use the cheap labor of your people and not pay anything.
Yeah, it's built on this very existing framework. And I guess the real thing about Prospera and Praxis, I think, are two of the more interesting ones, and we're going to continue hearing about them. Prospera, because it physically exists and the Honduran government wants them out. They have recently just been the whole legal substrate on which you're built is illegal, and we do not like it. And so please leave. And they have Trey Goff, who is the CEO / overlord, for lack of a better word, of Prospera, is preparing, and he has a lobbying arm to prepare to lobby Donald Trump, which the New York Times is, Wired reported on this about. They are taking now this idea and they're trying to get the Trump administration to sort of bring it stateside with these weird special administrative zones, charter cities, free cities, whatever you want to call it, whatever legal framework they're going to have set up. They're trying to bring it stateside now. And they said they originally were aiming for 10. According to Wired's reporting, that they were aiming low. They feel like they can swing for the fences a little bit more now.
This is wild. And I just want to, have you seen this? Because, as many things of last year, during the Trump campaign, Trump would just sort of rattle off in Mar-a-Lago in front of a bunch of American flags. And you're yeah, I don't know what he's saying. But it really, all of this really is just whichever last billionaire was in Mar-a-Lago and whispered in his ear and gave him some talking points, and then he regurgitated it. And I think that is why we are seeing Project 2025 unfold so T to the letter, exactly how it was written. So I just want to play this because I don't know if you've seen this particular clip. It's long, but I'm curious about what Trump, this is when back in March when he proposes building 10 new U.S. freedom cities.
Under my leadership, we will get it back in a very big way. If you look at just 3 years ago, what we were doing was unthinkable, how good it was, how great it was for our country. Our objective will be a quantum leap in the American standard of living.
Oh, boy.
That's what will happen. Here are just a few of the ways we can do it. Almost 1/3 of the land mass of the United States is owned by the federal government, with just a very, very small portion of that land, just a fraction, 1/2 of 1%. Would you believe that? We should hold a contest to charter up to 10 new cities and award them to the best proposals for development.
Oh yeah, you just like a little like children can participate and draw like a really pretty city and I'm sure it'll a contest, Andy. And then the best ideas get federal land to build the city. That sounds great.
It's wild how close that is to what is actually happening.
Cities in our country again.
We will build new cities in our country again. Sorry, what were you saying?
I'm just saying it's wild how close that is to what is actually probably taking place.
So, I mean, in other words, it's not going to be a contest. It's going to be a bidding war for who can pay the most to Donald Trump's personal coffers, to the slush fund, to the America First PAC. So, and I didn't know, because I know there is, do you know there is like a group of techies trying to do this to part of Sonoma County, and I can't remember the name of the city that they're doing this to, but the locals are fired up. Maybe someone in the chat knows. But the problem's always been like, look, there's people there. But if it's like federally owned land, or which is like, what about, I don't know, like native land, you know what I'm saying? Who's to say? They wouldn't just oust, a bunch of Native Americans or, whatever, or like take over a park, take Joshua Tree. They're hollowing out like the national parks as is. But anyway.
Sorry, something that is interesting that you sort of touched on as a joke is like, oh yeah, like, if there's nobody there, kind of it's because no one wants to live there, right? Like it's some sort of like, harsh landscape, some desert stuff, but part of what the meme is with Praxis is that they want to go to this very unforgiving place in Greenland, and not just them, some of the other ones, but like they're sort of like, I'll just use them as an example. They want to go and sort of invite terraforming companies, like these hydroponic companies, like that. One of the big things is like nuclear power. Like, yeah, we don't have regulations and we're going to need power.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I swear to God, if Elon or his ilk start getting into like nuclear shit, we are so fucked. Like physically, like it's one thing for, these SpaceX launches to erupt and to like fail. But when they start going like, no, we're just going to like privatize nuclear warheads and nuclear power so that anyone can like develop whatever the so many people will die. So you're right. Yes. Not only yourself, but others have been lobbying Trump around the idea of doing these startup nations, these deregulated cities, again, as if Lee Zeldin of the EPA didn't just completely gut the EPA. I mean, the Clean Air Act is just gone, and the Clean Water Act, both of them effectively, like it's just gone. There's no more ability to regulate anything, but RFK Jr. is gonna step in. I wanted to ask you, because Praxis is also trying to win over people kind of through like a party life influencerdom angle. Like they have been like, have they been like starting parties in like Lower Manhattan and through something called, what is it?
Dime Square.
Dime Square. Can you just explain how like the counterculture and the like techno and crypto fascists kind of overlap in this way?
I think that, so Dryden Brown, again, who's the founder, I think has been a little bit of a first mover on some of these things, where he has taken some of the points where he's like, that are, predominantly right-wing talking points. Oh, it's not safe in this city, oh, it's actually brave to be a right-winger, and to, rah-rah the West. He sort of merged that with like a I mean, if you've seen him speak, he's not like an eloquent guy per se. He doesn't really have that charisma factor.
Really? A wannabe tech entrepreneur who doesn't have the social skills to compellingly explain their argument? That's wild. Where have I seen that before? Elon Musk, Peter Thiel. Like, these people cannot speak on the things that they believe in. Anyway, sorry.
Well,
So
that's
he's not,
exactly
you're
right.
saying he's not charismatic.
Well, I'm saying that, like, from some of the New York Times reporting from an employee, he was like specifically telling them, "Hey, find hot girls, and bring them to our party in New York." Like and like not obfuscating. He's just like, just hot girls. We just need hot girls because it's just a bunch of more of that, more tech bro kind of situation.
Yeah.
And he was throwing parties in Dime Square, which is sort of this like center for the like New York alt-right young. If you can be an alt-right hipster, I don't even know if that's possible, but like that is essentially what that was. And you have like Anna Hachian coming out of there. Some of the more influential, like some podcast stuff. Obviously, there's podcasts involved.
Yeah, this is all sort of like the like reactionary podcasts, like irony pilled podcasts that, sort of they're not lefty, but they like have some leftist beliefs that have been like supported by Peter Thiel, which is very interesting to know that like reactionaries understand like how to fund reactionary that doesn't always look like a JD Vance or doesn't which is obviously his like prototype. But it can look like we're just funding these like downtown like hipsters who like really look like they just walked out of, a Terry Richardson, photo shoot. Like I just like the whole like God, by the way, the Terry Richardson like aesthetic has completely destroyed everything. I just want to name that right now. Like I lived in New York during like the American Apparel days of Terry Richardson. And you're like, ugh, we get it. You do cocaine. We get it. You've got money to burn.
Charlie XCX kind of got in trouble online for sort of name dropping one of the Dime Square influencers as well. She's like, "Oh, you're my buddy. We've done lines together." And I think that bringing it back to Praxis is like, if he can get a Charlie XCX, like Kamala is brat moment for Praxis, that would be a coup for him. I don't think that that's coming anytime soon. I don't think anything is coming anytime soon. I like on this specific one. Prospera is already built, and so there is a platform, and they're lobbying. They have said that they will try and get the American government involved if Honduras tries to kick them off their island, which is Roatan. And because Trey Goff is part of this Freedom Cities coalition, which again partly funded by Pronomos, which again funded by Thiel, is getting access to Trump. That could reasonably happen. And so Prospera is one to watch on the sort of downswing because I don't think the Honduran government is really keen on letting them stay.
Right.
And Praxis is sort of one to watch on the upswing because they're like the Gen Z. They're like the new hotness, so to speak, of these startup city memes.
This is Prospera, by the way, y'all. I don't know where this is, but again, it's not enough that gated communities already exist. It's not enough that there are enclaves of very, very wealthy expats who live in countries like Honduras and have armored guards and whatnot. These are very, unequal, countries. A lot of poverty. Even the rich people there live like that. You have to be like, no, I want to. It's not enough to have, in El Salvador, right? Like, whole enclaves that just use or try to just use cryptocurrency or to go to Puerto Rico, like the Jake and Logan Paul brothers, who are like, we're just going to go and we're going to, obliterate the real estate and whatnot. And we're going to jack up prices. And we're just going to like, it's not enough to do that. These folks want to completely take over an entire territory and have nothing to do with the local government or any kind of rule of law.
It's that. And as Praxis has shown, they're sort of offering people something to believe in, as nebulous and silly goose as it is. Like a lot of these founders sort of liken themselves to the founding fathers a lot of the time, and that is kind of, it's bonkers for a lot of reasons, but like they're sort of like, yeah, believe in us. We're building this thing for you to do.
Can I because just in case you needed any more sort of evidence that this guy Dryden is full of it, and how shady these kinds of cities, these utopic cities, startup cities are, there are connections to both Sam Bankman-Fried, obviously, crypto scammer currently serving time, but who is pleading with Donald Trump for, a pardon or to be released, and who I'm sure this will happen. And Martin Shkreli, pharma bro, overcharged, by the whatever hundreds of thousands for basic meds. What is their connection to these kinds of ideas? Because they're actually pretty direct. Isn't Martin Shkreli part of Praxis? Isn't he like a member?
If he has signed up, I am so excited to look into that. I'm not aware right now. I cannot speak to Mr. Shkreli and his crazy life. I wish I knew more about that. I'm gonna dive in, but it doesn't seem far, right? Like these sort of things tend to sort of snowball in the same circles because there's only so many people who have the money and are sort of tuned in. And this is sort of a very online situation also, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not, you're not necessarily getting like, I don't know, your average like oil exec rolling up to Dime Square.
So many of these dudes and not enough hot girls. Let's get some hot girls up in here. I can't wait for the new hot girl robots to drop. I mean, they're just they're super waiting for AI to be just like their robots to be sentient, but like only to a certain degree. And then Sam Bankman-Fried and then crypto's connection to all this, because that's largely how it's being funded, correct? I mean, you've got some, as you said, Peter Thiel's, not Prospera, what's the other one?
Pronomos.
Pronomos Capital is supporting it, but then there is a lot of crypto money.
Yeah, I mean, I think the situation is such that like if you need the money, crypto has it. And so you can easily say things like, oh, we're going to build our passport or our citizenship on the blockchain.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, we heard blockchain, here's some cash. Like, and it ties into sort of like the deeper crypto memes of like, oh, well, my property will be on the blockchain. We'll do all our financial transactions on the chain, like that sort of thing.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily, I mean, because there is no city, right, for Praxis at this stage. There is no city.
It's vibes.
It's vibes. And the vibes are, I really, really encourage anybody who has some time to kill and is down for some weird stuff to go check out Praxis's website, because it looks like you said like AI, like, generate me some like images of the West triumphant. And it's big castles and like dudes in like techno-futurist armor. It's very strange and surreal.
Can I just bemoan before I let you go that words like meta and praxis, these are all words that, like, as a longtime lefty, like, we were using these kinds of words, I mean, meta is like, obviously things are like meta, and so it's almost like academic speak. Praxis, right, is like practice and theory come together. And praxis for organizers, we'd always talk about praxis, like, oh, what's your praxis? And it's almost a joke because praxis is such a weird term in general. But it does mean, yes, the marriage of like your theory and your ideologies with like your actual activities and what you're doing. So it's so searing and annoying that 25 years later, when we were all doing praxis and talking about praxis, and all my anarchist friends were talking about praxis, that like, I mean, and not my anarchist friends who are against, like who are like capitalists. My anarchist friends who are like, nah, like smash everything, including Wall Street. But now you have these like extreme, libertarian capitalists that are using words like praxis.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a startup city that calls itself Tankies soon enough, I'm sure that'll.
Seriously, that's what's happening. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.